I shouldn't have opened that storage room at work. The Blackwood Mill loomed over the town, a skeletal giant of brick and rusted iron. I hated the place. Not just because it was my prison for 8 hours a night, 5 nights a week, but because it felt wrong, cold, empty in a way that went beyond just being unoccupied. It was a shell of its former self, a place where the shadows always seemed deeper and longer than they should be. I was Mark Olson, 28, recently single, and desperately trying to keep my head above water. The security gig at Blackwood Mill wasn't exactly my dream job, but it paid the bills. Barely. The mill had been a textile factory since the late 1800s, the lifeblood of this dying town. Then, in 2020, it shut down, leaving the town gasping for air. Some investment company bought it, converted part of it into office spaces, and now companies were slowly trickling in. But the vast majority of the mill remained untouched. Silent. Waiting. Sarah Jenkins, the day security guard, was my only real connection there. She was older, maybe late 50s, with a kind face and a no-nonsense attitude. She tried to make small talk during shift change, asked about my life. She'd warned me about the mill. "Place has a history, Mark," she'd said, her voice low. "Things happened here. Accidents. Bad ones. People just disappearing." I'd dismissed it as small-town gossip, the kind you get when a place has been around for over a century. But the way she said it stuck with me. One Tuesday, I was making my rounds. The silence was suffocating. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant thrum of the highway. I found myself in the basement, a labyrinth of pipes, crumbling concrete, and forgotten machinery. It was always colder down there, a damp, bone-chilling cold that no amount of layers could fight off. That's when I saw it. A door. Solid steel, padlocked shut. No markings, no indication of what lay beyond. It was tucked away in a corner, almost hidden behind a stack of decaying crates. It wasn't on any of the blueprints I'd seen. Curiosity and the crushing boredom got the better of me. I'm not proud of it. I knew I shouldn't. But the image of that locked door haunted me for the rest of my shift. The next night, I brought my lock-picking kit. I used to dabble in it as a kid, mostly to annoy my older brother. I hadn't touched it in years, but the muscle memory was still there. It took longer than I expected, the lock old and stubborn, but finally, with a satisfying click, it sprung open. The door creaked open, revealing a small storage room. The air inside was thick with dust and the smell of decay. It was dimly lit by the single bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting long, eerie shadows. The room was crammed with stuff. Old rolls of fabric, some stained and faded, others still vibrant with color. There were strange tools I couldn't identify, covered in rust and grime. Wooden crates overflowing with documents, ledgers, and what looked like personal journals. And in the center of the room, a heavy wooden table with strange symbols carved into its surface. I shouldn't have gone in. I knew it. But I did. I started sifting through the documents. Most were mundane. Invoices, payroll records, purchase orders. But then I found something else. A journal, bound in leather, its pages filled with elegant, looping script. It was written by a Blackwood, one of the original owners of the mill. The entries started out normal, detailing the day-to-day operations of the factory. But as I read on, the tone shifted. The entries became darker, more obsessive. They spoke of rituals, of sacrifices, of a power that could be harnessed from the mill itself. The Blackwoods believed the mill was a conduit, a gateway. I skimmed entries of numbers of disappearances of mill workers. The entries stated that these workers were to be used for the greater good, and that the town was becoming prosperous. I felt a chill run down my spine. I closed the journal, a sense of unease washing over me. I should have left then, closed the door and forgotten I ever found it. But something kept me there. A morbid curiosity. A feeling that I was on the verge of uncovering something significant. Something terrible. I picked up one of the tools. It was made of iron, heavy and cold in my hand. It looked like some kind of surgical instrument, but crueler, more brutal. I shuddered and put it back down. As I turned to leave, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow. A fleeting glimpse of a figure standing in the doorway. But when I turned to look, it was gone. I told myself it was just my imagination, the product of a long night and a disturbing journal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night, the strange occurrences started. The lights flickering, the sounds of footsteps in the empty corridors, the feeling of being followed. I tried to rationalize it, blamed it on the old building settling, the wind whistling through the cracks in the walls. But then came the voice. It started as a murmur, a faint static on my walkie-talkie. I thought it was just interference at first, but then it became clearer. A voice, low and raspy, speaking in a language I didn't understand. It would whisper things, the craves, release. He is coming. I tried to ignore it, to block it out. But it persisted, growing louder, more insistent each night. It was always just out of reach, never quite intelligible, but always present, always watching. I told Sarah about it during shift change. She paled. The radio's been acting up lately, she said, avoiding my gaze. Probably just needs new batteries. But I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew something. She wasn't telling me something. Mr. Abernathy, the building manager, was even less helpful. He was a stern, old-fashioned man who didn't seem to have much patience for my complaints. Probably just kids playing pranks, he said dismissively. Ignore it, Olson. It'll go away. But it didn't go away. It got worse. I started having nightmares. Vivid, disturbing dreams of the mill, of the Blackwood family, of the rituals they performed in the storage room. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, the voice echoing in my ears. During the day, I researched the mill's history. I spent hours online, digging through old newspaper articles, historical records, anything I could find. The more I learned, the more disturbed I became. There were rumors of strange disappearances, of accidents that seemed deliberate. There were whispers of occult practices, of a dark secret hidden within the mill's walls. I found references to a series of disappearances of mill workers in the late 1800s and early 1900s. People simply vanished without a trace. The disappearances coincided with a period of unprecedented prosperity for the town and the mill. The Blackwoods became immensely wealthy. The voice on the radio started calling me by name. Mark, it would whisper. We know you're listening. You open the door, Mark. Now you belong to us. I started seeing things. Shadows moving in the periphery, objects disappearing and reappearing. The feeling of being touched when no one was there. I was losing it. I knew it. But I couldn't stop. I was drawn to the mill, to the storage room, to the darkness that lurked within. One night, I found a hidden message in the storage room. It was carved into the underside of the table, hidden from view. A symbol, a series of interlocking circles and triangles. I recognized it from my research. It was an ancient sigil, a symbol of summoning. As soon as I touched it, the room went cold. The lights flickered violently. The voice on the radio became a deafening roar. I ran. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for air, the mill looming behind me like a malevolent presence. The figure in the shadows became more frequent. I saw it everywhere, lurking in the corners of my vision, standing in the hallways, watching me from the darkness. It was tall and gaunt, its face obscured by shadows. It emanated a feeling of pure dread, a sense of ancient evil that made my blood run cold. I tried to talk to Sarah again, to beg her to tell me what she knew, but she just shook her head, her eyes filled with fear. Leave it alone, Mark, she pleaded. Just leave it alone. It's not worth it. I knew she was right, but I couldn't. I was too far in. I had opened the door, and now something was coming through. Something was coming through, something that wanted me. Something that wanted the town. Detective Miller arrived in town. He was investigating a series of strange incidents, missing persons, unsettling discoveries in the woods surrounding the mill. He questioned me about my job, about the mill's history. I told him everything, about the storage room, about the voice, about the figure in the shadows. He listened patiently, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. He thought I was crazy. One night, I confronted Mr. Abernathy. I demanded to know what was going on, what the Blackwoods had done, what was hidden within the mill. He sighed, his face etched with sadness. The town made a deal, he said, his voice barely a whisper. A long time ago. When the mill first opened. A deal for prosperity, for success. But every deal has a price. What price? I asked, my voice trembling. Sacrifice, he said. The Blackwoods, they fed it, to keep the mill running, to keep the town alive. Fed what? He wouldn't answer. He just shook his head, his eyes filled with tears. It's too late, he said. It's already here. And you opened the door. I went back to the storage room. I had to find a way to stop it. I poured through the journals, searching for a ritual, a spell, anything that could banish the evil I had unleashed. I found something. A passage describing a ritual to seal the gateway, to close the door between worlds. It required a sacrifice. A willing sacrifice. I knew what I had to do. I called Sarah. I told her I needed her help. She was hesitant, but eventually she agreed. We met in the basement, in front of the storage room. The air was thick with dread, the shadows deeper than ever. Are you sure about this, Mark? She asked, her voice trembling. No, I said, but we have to try. We entered the storage room. The figure in the shadows was waiting for us. It stood in the center of the room, its eyes burning with malevolent light. I started the ritual. I chanted the words from the journal, drawing the sigil on the floor with chalk. Sarah assisted, lighting candles, preparing the ingredients. As I chanted, the room began to shake. The lights flickered violently. The voice on the radio screamed. The figure in the shadows lunged. Sarah screamed. I pushed her aside, stepping in front of the figure. I'm the sacrifice, I said. Take me. Leave them alone. The figure hesitated. Then it lunged again. Everything went black. I woke up in darkness. I was lying on the floor, cold and disoriented. The storage room was gone. In its place was a tunnel leading into the depths of the mill. The voice on the radio whispered in my ear. Welcome home, Mark. I stood up and began to walk into the darkness. The mill had me now,